Hi there, I'm Tom Field. I'm Senior Vice President of Editorial with Information Security Media Group. I want to welcome you back to the latest edition of the Cybersecurity Leadership Panel Series, this one with a bit of a difference. Here, we're bringing CMOs together with CISOs to talk about marketing in an age of extreme competition and noisy messaging. I want to welcome the panelists that we have here joining us today. First of all, from the CMO community, I want to introduce Dan Wolff, CMO with BigFix, and Carolyn Japic, CMO with Kenna Security. From the CISO community, we've got some familiar faces here. We've got Anne-Marie Scollay, former CISO with Axiom, Chris Roberts, virtual CISO and researcher with the Hillbilly Hit Squad, and Chuck Brooks, CISO and president with Brooks Consulting. Folks, thank you so much for joining me here today. We're now operating in uncharted territory, and we're pressured by shifts in our approach to marketing. The impacts are varied, yet they affect every vendor in the cybersecurity sector. Steve Jobs once said that marketing is about values. It's a complicated and noisy world, and we're not going to get a chance to get people to remember much about us. No company is. So we have to be really clear about what we want them to know about us. So today with this panel, we're going to explore the pressures and the challenges to our messaging, our positioning, and our approach to competition and to marketing spend. We're going to start with positioning and messaging. Now, the two of these, positioning and messaging, have come to become significant challenges in an era when we have so many cybersecurity vendors competing for share of voice in every segment. Some vendors have opted for outlandish claims in order to stand apart from the competition. My question, and Caroline, I'd love for you to take this first, and maybe Dan respond, and then we'll hear from our CISOs as well. Are fantastic claims making the sales process more difficult, and are we creating even more skeptical buyers along the way?
I would start with the fact that you never, ever want to put anything out there that isn't true. I mean, you know, the CISO audience is naturally skeptical. Luckily, my brother's in security, so I was raised with someone who has this mentality. And if you give them any reason not to believe you, you're blowing your chances. And so I believe it's more important to focus on the true value that you bring to the customer, account-based marketing style, make it personalized, make it about things that they care about. But I am not in support of outlandish claims that are not true, because you're just going to run into trouble either with the sales team, with the CX team, with the support team. I mean, just down the road, you're just setting yourself up for failure.
You know, I run product management as well as product marketing, so I have kind of a unique connection to what our customers actually use our product for and the value they see, where we win, where we lose. And so tying that unique value add and how you solve problems directly to your message, I think helps a lot. You know, we run our marketing campaigns around what we call pain points. So, and it's not, hey, we have this great whizzy feature, or we do real time this or that. It's, hey, you know, COVID is out there. You got a work from home problem, and use that as to give a license to talk about your message, and hopefully that can tie directly into these pain points. You know, right now it's all about budget cutting, staff cutting, work from home. But you know, we're seeing the traditional problems kind of arise in our particular area that we appeal to.
Truth in marketing is essential with the security community, more so than the other community, probably because of the variety of expertise and also the testing of the products. And the other issue is if you represent something that's not true, and this is particularly good for the government market, and it fails, you may have some liabilities. So there are issues that are different in security marketing, cybersecurity marketing, than there are in other verticals. So I'd like to stress that it really comes down to keeping the message and qualifications and capabilities of products and services within the realm of possibility.
I'm going to challenge that one a little bit, and I'm going to challenge it from an accountability standpoint. How many security vendors do you know that have actually, when their marketing fails or when their product fails, have actually been taken to the cleaners by the very companies that they fail to protect? How many companies out there with the security community that say that they can protect or say that they can defend or they've got you 100% secure fail spectacularly spectacularly. And then all of a sudden, we managed to get the poor company coming and going. We charge them for a product that doesn't work. Then we charge them to actually fix the product. And when they get their ass handed to them, we charge them even more money for risk remediation. That's my problem. There is no accountability in this industry.
It's changing, but you're right. For the commercial market itself, it just it seems to be they're oblivious to it.
It's very rare, being in security for 20 years, seeing a company is claiming total, absolute protection against all threats. It's interesting, in the fine print, every EULA you'll ever see from a security company protects and indemnifies a security company for that. So it's, but I can see your point in getting into when someone calls a product total protection or complete protection. Or
the ultimate accountability is that you churn out and you're no longer a customer of theirs. So there is accountability at some point.
Great. So at that point, you've left a smoldering heap of an organization behind because you told them you could protect them and you sold them a bill of goods. And then their data ends up sitting out there in the public domain. And especially for the small and medium business markets, 60% of the small and medium business markets, when they get their ass handed to them, don't last another 6 to 12 months.
See, Chris, this is why I like having you in these conversations, because I know we're going to cut right to the chase here.
Yeah.
To the earlier comments, I don't think I've seen companies coming out and offering guarantees or other promises that seem completely fantastical, but I do see and receive cold call solicitations in email and other forms where the claim is just, hey, how can we solve this, whatever problem it is for you. And I think the challenge is being as a CISO is getting through that clutter and finding the actual value and the companies that you want to have that conversation with. And I think the more claims that are out there, the harder it is for CISOs and their security teams to really identify the solutions that are meaningful and have that value add for their organization.
I want to talk about increased competition. Now, today, the challenge is to convince customers to buy one solution from a very large field of competing offerings, and that field's not getting any smaller. So my question, and again, I'd love to start with the marketers, Dan and Carolyn, and get your perspective, and then hear the CISO's take on this also. Aside from vendors who claim that they're disrupting the status quo, is it easier and more effective for vendors to escalate their marketing messaging than to focus on the one big thing that they might do that does differentiate them in their markets? And the question becomes, again, how do we stand out amid this wall of noise? Marketers, your perspective, and then CISOs, please give us yours.
To me, that's, current conditions is that it makes it easier and harder to get your message out. It used to be, every one of your targets is getting 6,000 messages a day. And so how do you stand out there? And the fundamental way you pull through that, I think, has unchanged. You have to speak to the value you bring, and with relevant customer testimonial, relevant pain points that you address, and so forth. It's become harder a bit because of the downturn. But budget cutting. There's fewer people to target that have much more to do. They have actually less time to perceivably less time to listen to more messages. What we're finding, however, is that it's somehow easier for people to get people onto virtual events. They're not traveling. They're spending more time researching. And so we're doing things like, virtual wine tastings and rum tastings and things, and we're getting C-level executives show up for hours on this in major numbers. And so it's an interesting mixed bag. But I think at the fundamental level, you've got to appeal to their pain points.
Well, I think it really depends on the size of the organization, right? So I actually just wrote a blog about this, or an article for Forbes about creating your niche, right? So if you're a gigantic company that has 1,000, security solutions, it's going to be a little bit different. If you're a startup or a smaller company, you have to focus on that core value you bring, and that's going to be a singular message, maybe that you slice and dice several different ways to get your message across the marketing mix. But, I think, as Kenna, we offer multiple products, but we really focus on the value we bring for vulnerability management, helping customers focus on those 5% of vulns that really matter, that are going to hurt them. And you'll see that message consistently across all of our materials, across everything that we do. And that's how we really deal with this noise. The studies have, I think it's up to like 32 touch points now before someone hears you. And imagine these large organizations, the same people are coming after them from 1,000 different companies, thousands of different companies every day, getting more and more messages. And it's just confusing, and it's just junk and noise. And, to get through that, you have to have a clear, concise message based on the true value you bring. And it has to be true for Chris.
Chris, Anne-Marie, Chuck, you're the targets of this noise. What makes an organization stand out?
It's really underlying your differentiation and getting to the point succinctly. To Caroline's point, I am out there looking at multiple solutions when I have a problem that needs to be solved. And in looking at those multiple solutions, I don't want to spend ages digging through layers and layers and trying to figure out what does this product do and how does it fit within the infrastructure that I have and I'm running. I want to be able to just basically give me the elevator pitch, make it clear and concise at what your differentiation is and how you work with the other products that I may have.
I think part of that one is as well, and this is maybe something that's worthwhile bearing in mind, especially in today's market. You look at where we're sitting. We've been sold a bill of goods for the last 20 plus years. So we have all the toys. What I'm looking for is to consolidate those toys much more effectively. To more effectively get a much clearer message as to not just how you can help, but also how you can save me some time, some effort, some management. I mean, remember, we're from a resource and a time constraint. We've now gone to a point where we at least had our hands to some degree around the challenges until we ran into the COVID era. And now we're sitting there going, okay, we've been scattered to the four winds. I still need my visibility. I still need to be executed effectively. And I need that to happen with potentially less tools than I'm currently using. And I need that consolidation points. And, rather than saying, hey, I'm going to add something to it, how can you help take something away and actually still give me more than I already have?
I think that goes back to what Dan said about the pain points. And that's what a lot of marketers make a mistake on not doing. They don't recognize the needs and requirements of what the company may be looking for. Instead, they just try to uniformly sell everything. And it doesn't work that way. You really have to have a more sophisticated approach to CISOs and to CIO shops to know where they're failing, what their gaps are. It's much more of a comprehensive sale. And the second thing I think that now that's sort of changed is that there's more interaction among CISOs. They share information on vendors and products that they hadn't done in the past. It's not so that they're not really competing in this sense. The CISOs all feel in the same boat. So I think that you really can't sort of go in with a product that doesn't have a reputation or a knowledge from others. You need you have to approach the peer groups too.
I mean, I'm a member of the Tinkerers group, and there are several hundred of us in that group, and we share a lot of information, and especially you've got some amazing people. I mean, Mike's out there, and a lot of them are out there doing the CISO podcast. There's a lot of other folks in a minute that are also doing a lot of other stuff where we're actually putting information out about how to actually talk effectively with us. And if you don't listen to that, and you don't do your research, and you come at us like you have for the last 20 years, you're done. End of discussion.
There's an old saying that there's no better salesman than a happy customer. And what you're talking about is exactly right. That positive comments from a colleague are more valuable than $1 million worth of marketing. And so the challenge for marketers is how do you leverage, how do you shape that? And the way you shape that is you build damn good products, I think, and you support them really well. So that's a key aspect I think you need to bring.
If you're a mid-sized enterprise, you look at G2 Crowd to see what peers are talking about. So helping your customers make it easy to create reviews on there is a good step from a marketing perspective.
Many vendors have responded to the pandemic by cutting back on their content production. So in evaluating the effective content on the intended audience, marketers now have to rely on feedback from the marketplace, which is what we've been talking about here. So I've got two questions. First question I have for Caroline and for Dan. And that question is, how have you been able to measure the impact of your content on your audience? So let me hear from you two, and for the CISOs, I've got another question.
We measure everything. We are a data science, data-driven organization. So from the smallest activity to the largest, I can give you so much data, and it's how we live and operate on a regular basis. I would rather have 5 pieces of amazingly strong content, again, that's very clear and crisp, that communicates the clear value of of what we bring to the table across the buyer's journey. So you really need to understand, like, are they at the beginning just researching? You don't want SDRs calling in and bugging them, because you want to help them get the information they need, right? So that they're not digging through layers and layers of just junk to try to get to the nuggets there. I think that's super important. Also, we partner with a third-party research firm you may have heard of called Scientia. They're really well known in the security space, and every year we produce 2 prioritization to prediction reports. Those reports are covered broadly from a media perspective, and they bring true value to our prospects. And so we leverage those to communicate with the prospects out of talking about research that they're interested in, they want to know about. And so I think it's account-based marketing in content is really, really important. You don't need 1,000 pieces. You need to talk to the problems that these prospects have.
Well, the challenge I have in my world is I'm a smaller part of a very large organization, so we lack for good tools and good data. And so you see, you're always kind of limited by the quality of your data and the quality of the tools, and be able to correlate that data as well. You can never have perfect information. So simply saying, dude, did this campaign or this asset result in a lead? Did that lead result in an opportunity? And did that opportunity close? Very, very basic things are very important and difficult to achieve to really get that clarity.
So Dan, Caroline, the extra value of this discussion today is I'm going to help you measure the value of your content. Chuck, you want to get us started? How effective would you say vendor content has been overall?
CISOs are voracious readers, and they also want to know about the policy implications, how it fits, what the threats are out there, to make it more of a branding piece than just a clear product piece. And I think a lot of companies make the mistake of just being so into the minutia of the product rather than the broader views. And I think you need to do both. But I think to get attention in today's world, you need to be relevant and you need to be talking about the issues of the day. And you see that a lot now with the bigger companies doing that. But I think smaller companies need to do that too to get noticed.
It really, what's been effective has been concise communication that really underscores the differentiation that the vendor is providing. And I think the other thing, and I've heard this from a number of other CISOs, is that CISOs have earned, probably fairly, a reputation of buying all the latest and greatest toys and not necessarily getting them all implemented and deployed. And so things are being paid for and not necessarily used in the organization. And with now closer budget scrutiny, and to Chris's earlier point, the goal of simplification and reducing the number of applications and solutions working in their environment, we're looking to see the marketing content that explains how simple is your product to implement, how well does it play with the other solutions that I have, and to Chris's earlier comment, what can I take out of my environment by using your product?
I want to talk about B2B, B2C, and D2H. Now, traditional B2B marketers often reject lessons from B2C principles. Yet there is evidence that with increased noise and constant social media chatter, more prosumers are inclined toward messaging that targets their human decision-making process. Makes sense. Mark Zuckerberg famously declared upon building out Facebook's business channel that their guiding principle was to be D2H, direct to human. So again, I've got a different question for the CISOs and a different question for the marketers. For the marketers, Dan, Caroline, have you adopted a different approach to outreach in the current era? And how important do you think the human factor is, for example, in ABM marketing campaigns?
That is absolutely true. And there's a whole saying, all politics is local. It's like all marketing should be personal. And in our marketing messages, we try to appeal to what we're doing to the target to improve their value to the organization. Like, how can our product improve your value to the organization? How can it improve your group's value, which is under pressure? Every group is under pressure to justify their existence, to justify any purchases, especially now. And so, how can you improve your brand and capabilities in there? You know, a lot of these product training, free training and things like that are targeted at improving an employee's personal brand. So it absolutely targets the personal.
It's not marketing of old. We don't allow our SDRs or our nurture team to send out just blanket emails. Everything we do is based on segmentation of the accounts, understanding the accounts around account-based marketing. We know exactly who we're selling to. We know the 5 people we're trying to get to inside every organization, and our team researches them before we send anything out. So to Ann's point, like, I want to understand, what her security infrastructure looks like. What other tools is she using? How do we fit into that? How do we make it clear and easy for them to understand the value that we'll bring? And also, what is Ann all about? I'm going to look at her Twitter. I'm going to look at her LinkedIn and her Facebook. And if there's a cause that she cares about, then we're going to talk about that and just find connection. So I agree with the human side of things, because people care about themselves and they care about people more than they care about bits and bytes. And that's how we try to approach it. Just, be human, build relationships. That's what we're looking for. We're not looking for just to sell you something and run off. That's not how we operate.
So Anne-Marie, you and I in particular have had long conversations about the human factor in cybersecurity. So I'd welcome your perspective as well as from Chuck and from Chris. Has cybersecurity vendor messaging been human enough? And is it being delivered in a sufficiently authentic voice in your experience?
I don't think it's become very human. In fact, I find it a little more artificial in the feel and the content that I get. I think where I have been, where I've been looking for solutions to add to my organization, the vendors that I have had the most beneficial relationships with, or the ones that I've initiated relationships with, have been ones, often they're ones that I've heard about from other CISOs. I think it was Dan said earlier in this conversation, the best customer is a happy customer. And I have a lot of, I think, sympathy for the, for organizations that are looking to market and sell their products, because this is a tough market to get into. And we speak a slightly different language, and how to get into our heads is different. And I think some of that's the function of what we do and who we are. But yeah, I think it really boils down to building up those personal relationships. And sometimes that means that those relationships are something that you build over years. Sometimes as an individual even changes companies before you might actually realize a sale on that. But in that relationship, I think the value there for marketers to be patient is that whether or not that individual that you're fostering that relationship with is able to actually purchase your solution right now, as you're building that relationship, they might be talking about you in positive ways to other colleagues and other peers who might actually be in a position to be looking to purchase that solution now.
I think what has changed, though, the communication venues have changed, largely because of COVID-19, also because of generational issues, how they use social media. And a lot of the people are younger. So I think a lot of those skills are now being transferred into social media like LinkedIn, where what you just mentioned, where you follow their careers, you follow where they went to school, you link up with people that on those social media platforms. And I think it's taken a major, it's become a major factor in marketing now. I think that it's much more transparent. You can look at someone's LinkedIn profile and see everything about them than you could in the past. But now I think it's more out of necessity, since you can't go to events anymore in person, where I've always found those to be the best and most valuable. But now you have to rely on digital mediums. So it is a different world.
I mean, I'll plant a flag for a couple of companies that I'm doing an advisory role for, because I'm relatively, I get dragged into a number of companies, so I'm holding a flag for a number of different organizations. And for me, part of the role and part of the work I do is, if I believe in it effectively enough, I will go to my peer group and I'll be like, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we're up to, give me 5 minutes. And it's, you almost walk the organization in it, because we know that group effectively enough and we know them well enough. So we're happy to do that. But it's a risky thing. You got to be really careful about it, because one bad discussion and one bad comment from my side on the team, and that's, you've just burnt not just one contact, but a whole bunch of different contacts. I think the other thing is, as well, to add on to this, is there is a huge difference, and I still feel there's a huge difference between how the European market and how the Middle East market attacks any of this and how the US market attacks this. To me, it is building a relationship. It is having that, and it's coming in with 2 ears and 1 mouth. I don't need to hear what you can do for me before you actually even know who the hell I am. Don't tell me how you can solve my problems if you haven't even taken the 5 minutes to listen to what the hell they are. And too many companies are coming in and telling me you can solve my problems, especially on LinkedIn now. It's getting ridiculous. I can solve your problems. You don't even know who the hell I am.
In the European and the Asian markets, you're seeing better listening before the pitch?
Absolutely. Much better listening, much better considerations over how do I build a relationship? How do I get to know you, the human, you, the organization, the people around you? What do you care about? And that isn't so that I can sell you something. It isn't so I can take you sodding golfing. It isn't any of that BS. It's, I actually genuinely care. I care because of what I'm selling, but I also care because I actually think eventually it can probably help you. And if it can't, we'll still go out. We will still relax and do something. We unfortunately use the corporate entertainment as a weapon. And that is also a big problem in this industry. If I take you out for dinner or I take you for golf, there's an expected something. And that's a terrible way to do business.
Some of your experience, have you seen there's a notion of sales approaching the customer as a trusted advisor?
And as long as that expectation is set up front, I think that level of wariness starts to come down, especially if it's demonstrated over time.
Let's talk a little bit about the direction of the marketing message. So the pandemic has forced cutbacks in marketing budgets across all segments. Physical events budgets obviously been reallocated in part to virtual events, and spending on communication has certainly been impacted. So Caroline, Dan, I'd love to hear from you first. And again, I've got a different perspective for the CISOs, but from the marketing perspective, what have you found to be the most effective ways to reach your audience in this new era that we're in today and for the foreseeable future?
It's still about the marketing mix. It's not about one thing. I'm not a huge fan of giant virtual events. We did, if you look at our marketing mix, and if they were dials, we've dialed some up, we've dialed some down. We're listening really closely to our digital signals that we're seeing. People are interested in a certain topic, or they're downloading a certain white paper more than another. But it's still about the marketing mix. You can't just do virtual events. You still have to do email nurture, whether you like it or not, as long as you're doing it the right way. You still have to serve up digital ads. We do a lot of work on LinkedIn. I mean, it's about all of it together. It's about touching those people with information that they care about, that they're looking for. It's also about looking for external triggers or external cues that help you understand kind of where they are and what they're looking for. That's why we love our P2P reports so much, because typically people are downloading them because they're really trying to better understand certain research area, and that helps us a lot in just understanding their cues and where they're headed. It's got
to be a mix. The old traditional funnel, where top of funnel people are learning, they're exploring, they're understanding, they're teaching themselves about solutions out there, and then more and more people stay in that phase much longer before they ever want to talk to someone. They're doing much more digital research and actually making short lists down to 2 or 3 vendors before they even reach out and talk to you. So, Chris's challenge of understand my problem just makes it that much tougher on marketers, because you don't have the opportunity to have an engagement to understand what the problem is, what your personal issues are. So you have to have better, I think, connection. You hear me talking about pain points. You really, really have to understand what the pain points are. and be able to predict those. So, for example, ours, the work from home challenge has been a big winner for us because we have a good solution in that area. Also, tools consolidation is another one where they're getting a lot of interest, a lot of uptake when we talk about tools consolidation and do these things we call business value assessments are a big attractor. Then on the other side, there's the old the glad handing stuff, like, hey, come to an event and get a free bottle of whiskey in the mail to attend. That stuff's working pretty well too. So it's the mix in support of what Carolyn's saying as well.
So for Chris and the CISOs, Chris, you talked about the dinners, you talked about the golf events. From you, everyone, from the others as well, in what ways are marketing campaigns you're exposed to resonating with you, and how are they not resonating in this new era?
I think a couple of different things. And actually, while we were talking in the previous conversation, I actually went out to BigFix and I went out to Carolyn's company as well. And I looked at it. For me, the biggest thing is your desire to actually help me understand and help me learn. And you do that by not putting stuff behind a register wall or a paywall or anything else like that. And to both of these organizations' points, I can go out there, I can download data sheets, I can download all sorts of things I want without having to expose who I am. So I can do my research relatively anonymously. Now, when we talk about dinners and when we talk about events and stuff like that, what I want is I would like to come along and listen, but I don't want the sales pitch. If I needed the sales pitch, I wouldn't be here in the first place. What I want is information. I want intelligence. I need the help. I need to understand the consolidation capabilities. I need to understand how these things can happen. But I don't want to be sold a bill of goods. Bring somebody in who's relatively independent. Bring somebody in who's known in the industry. Bring somebody in who can say, hey, look, I'm completely agnostic. Quite honestly, I'd rather taser most of this part of the industry. But here's the logic. I'm stood in front of you. And you do it without product pitching. Unfortunately, most of us, let's be honest, in this day and age, most of us are cynical bastards. And we see straight through it, no matter how you try to disguise it. So be upfront and be honest with us. And I think that's the biggest part.
It's providing a forum where we can get the information that we're seeking. I love the idea of having an independent voice in that forum as well. And then, as we've said earlier, being able to hear from our peers, so setting up the virtual event in a way that we can network with our peers, and maybe we talk about solutions or challenges that aren't necessarily what you're trying to sell, but you're providing that forum for that sounding board, so that we can have that exchange of information. And it feels there is the recognition that this is still an event that is being hosted by the vendor, that there is, we're there to learn something about the vendor and or the problem that they're trying to solve, but that it becomes more of a knowledge exchange overall.
Perfect example. We all know that RSA, Black Hat, and a lot of the other conferences are pay to play. It sucks, but it is unfortunately a factor. It's a fact of what it is. So if I go into a keynote at one of those organizations and somebody has sponsored it, I don't want to hear a carefully crafted message about how their product is great in the environment and how they've basically smoothed the magic quadrant enough that they're up in the upper right hand corner and screw everybody else. I want to hear something I haven't heard before. I want to hear something that's different. I want to hear something fresh, something that's unique, something that challenges me.
One of the things I've seen in some conferences is they require a customer to be part of any presentation.
So there's a fine balance point.
Mm-hmm.
But it comes back to the information and the education. There's a way of doing it that respects who we are without treating us like idiots.
One of the most interesting conferences I went to recently that got the biggest amount of attention was former head of the Central Intelligence Agency, counterintelligence, speaking about the similarities between tradecraft and cybersecurity. Now that's a real interesting topic for people. It got them, a company sponsored it, but it's subtle. And I think part of the messaging here that I see is that the cybersecurity community, we've been bombarded for so many years with products and capabilities and exaggerations that we want some interesting things around it. We'll get to the product and we'll see how does it fill, and we'll build the relationship from the marketing. But we want to not be sold a bill of goods. We want to see something that's really useful and informational for our own use.
I'm going to take a few minutes to wrap up here, and I've got separate questions for the CMOs and for the CISOs. For Dan, for Caroline, given everything we've talked about today and what you've been through over the past 6 months, what would you say are the most critical impacts to all of cybersecurity marketing and messaging during this pandemic shutdown, and how have they impacted the reach and the reception of your campaigns?
To me, it's clearly understanding the pain, the needs that our customers are going through, and appeal to that credibly, honestly, and to sincerely put forward a solution that you think can solve their current pain and pressure points, which have really changed in the last 6 months to work from home, to cost cutting, to tool consolidation. And so, because really, frankly, nothing else matters to them. They're dealing with an emergency. It's a crisis. So how can we help them through the crisis in a credible, humble way? And that's been a winner for us.
I think it's becoming that trusted advisor and not trying to just sell them something. It's not about that at all. It's about building that relationship, helping them through this difficult time. We have some industries that we serve that have just, it's been a nightmare for them, right? They've completely imploded. We have others that are doing great. So we're kind of in the middle here, but still trying to serve the needs of the customers first. That's the whole point. That's why we're here. To build an organization that's a partner. CISOs, you heard the key words, trusted advisors. The events are gone for now. We aren't going out to dinners. We aren't going out to regional conferences or the city CISO events that we have. If the cybersecurity vendors want to be your trusted advisors, then friends, what's the one bit of advice you would give to them in closing your comments today?
Listen to my problems and the challenges that I'm trying to solve. Don't just assume you know what my problems are. And so listen with open ears and then have a conversation. And if the problems I'm trying to solve aren't met by your solutions, but you know somebody else who is, I think that's what a trusted advisor does, is they genuinely say, hey, I'm not the right fit, but let me introduce you, you might consider this. And I know that's counterintuitive from a marketing and sales perspective, but I think that's how you start to build that relationship. And just because you're referring me on doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that I'll forget about you and your solution. In fact, quite the opposite. It's probably going to be more memorable for me in that reason.
To look what the CISOs are writing and saying in their own profiles. And rather than just reach out to a product, comment on what they're saying, whether it's a topic of interest, get to know them first before you try and sell anything. And also, join some of these LinkedIn groups that focus solely on information security and the problems that are current to CISOs, and get to know those. And then before you approach anyone, really know what the market is saying, rather than just trying to do a scattershot approach and find anyone who has a title on LinkedIn, but really get to know who they are and what they want. It's another way of saying basically that you're listening, but you're looking now with a limited venue. You don't have those events. You don't have those other opportunities. And LinkedIn, to a lesser extent, Twitter are venues that you should take advantage of.
Be accountable. Be accountable for what you have, what you do, what you sell, and who you are. But also do your research, not just on who we are, but go out and look at the CISO podcast. Come here, read this, watch this, make this usable for the people that are around you, and help them understand how to better approach this. We are approachable. We actually do need a lot of help, but we need it in a way that we can disseminate it effectively.
Friends, it's been an excellent conversation. I want to thank each of you for coming to this with your honesty, with your candor. It's been a challenging conversation, but I think it's been an honest one. This is the first time we've sat and we've talked about marketing with cybersecurity leaders. It is not the last time. Thanks so much for staying tuned to the Cybersecurity Leadership Series. We'll be back here again soon with more guests, more conversations, and more opportunities to challenge yourselves. Thank you so much. For Information Security Media Group, I'm Tom Field.